Hello everyone, this is AndresRestart, and today we're talking about what may be Nintendo's Switch 2 leaked new IP, the one we've been waiting for so many years, finally, from Monolith Soft, one of Nintendo's very best developers that always delivers high quality, massive games, and it's looking like from one of the most reliable leakers out there, we're getting a little bit of info on what this might be, and my initial understanding of it is that it's a new IP, but there are other considerations here. So today I would like to dive into some analysis on what this may be and also discuss a few different possibilities. But before going forward, let me ask that if you do enjoy my content, to please subscribe and hit that notification bell. So if you've been following the channel lately, or other Nintendo channels lately, or just Midori herself on Twitter, you may have realized that they have been speaking on a lot of different leaks lately. A lot more than usual. And I think this is a point that should be addressed first before moving forward because we have been talking about them a lot lately, and I want to explain why. So Midori is considered to be an incredible leaker, probably the best leaker we've seen, because not only do they apparently have a spotless track record, but they are talking about a wide breadth of things, not just from one particular company. They're talking about things from Sega, Atlus, Square Enix, Nintendo, and many of the time it's things fairly far in advance, which is why we're hearing about all these different codename projects from Nintendo. Now, of course, we should take these things with a grain of salt, because maybe it's not true, and there's a variety of reasons that could be. Perhaps they have had some good sources in the past, but not anymore. Perhaps plans can change. Perhaps somehow we've been fooled into thinking that they're reliable. But the receipts are all there. We've been paying attention to this person for a long time, and while they are talking about a lot of things, and there's still a lot that's yet to have been proven, there is also a significant history where a lot of what they've said has come to fruition. So taking a look here, this is pretty recent, May 26th, just a couple days ago, a title related to the Bleach series will be released on Nintendo Switch hardware. And then on May 28th, guess what happened? It's confirmed now. A Bleach game, Brave Souls, for Switch and other platforms was announced. So this just goes to show that Midori gets things right, and even recently. So then, what are they saying about this Monolith Soft new IP? Well, again, that's my interpretation of what this is. We are not certain. This is what Midori said. Legacy is a project in development by Monolith Soft. It is in development with Nintendo. So it is not an external company, this is a Nintendo published title. So they had actually replied to someone else earlier on this, and they were actually asked about Monolith Soft, and Midori put out this, that Monolith Soft is working on this project known as Legacy, and so this is the information we have. Now many people in this study were thinking, oh, this must be something Xenosaga related. And so that's why Midori here is explaining that Xenosaga is not something that Nintendo would work on. Monolith Soft is a Nintendo studio, wholly owned. This is a Nintendo published title. This is an internal Nintendo project. This is 100% Nintendo, and thus it's not anything sort of Xenogears, Xenosaga, remake, remaster related. But many likely would assume that Monolith Soft would simply be working on the next Xenoblade game, because Monolith Soft is responsible for all the Xenoblade games. But when taking a look at the codenames for the different Xenoblade games, it's kind of hard to find a match here. So the first one was Kyojin, that stands for like a giant titan. Have you ever heard of Shingeki no Kyojin, Attack on Titan? But anyways, for Xenoblade Chronicles 3D, they use Small Folk. For Xenoblade Chronicles X, they use Space Travel. Xenoblade Chronicles 2 is Big Folk 2. Iroh just stands for Torna, Torna the Golden Country, that's the DLC for Xenoblade 2. BFSW, that's just Big Folk Switch. So this is a Switch remaster of Big Folk. Big Folk 3, Xenoblade Chronicles 3. And so when we look at the different code names here, outside of the original, which is Kyojin, all of them relate to some type of folk. Now I will point out Xenoblade Chronicles X has space travel. So when considering these code names and looking at this code name we have for Monolith Soft and its Legacy, Legacy doesn't relate to folk in any way, really. It's completely different from anything else we've seen codenamed from Monolith Soft. It's not like any of the other Xenoblade games. But similar to Xenoblade X, it's possible they could have a side venture Xenoblade game, like X, and it has just its own separate codename. This is totally possible. However, let's consider this. What are the odds that Monolith Soft would make another Xenoblade game, and it's not following the main line of Xenoblade games, and it's something more like X, but it's not related to X, but a whole other side trajectory, which would lead to a totally different naming scheme for the codename. Because if it was a follow-up to X, it might be somehow related to space travel, but it's not. It's just Legacy. So from that, I would think they're working on something new here. I think it should be noted that when we go to Monolithsoft's website, right, we check out their recruitment page, and we go to the bottom, they still have two different listings here. They still have their hiring for Zelda game listing, and they also have their new IP listing. So for those that don't know, Monolithsoft doesn't just make the Xenoblade games. They offer support development for The Legend of Zelda, for Animal Crossing, for Splatoon. You can see both Splatoon and Animal Crossing here. But they also have been working on a new IP for years, throughout the entire Switch era apparently. They had put out this concept art here, which appears to be like this warrior princess Zelda. We're not saying it's, I'm not saying it's actually Zelda, but it looks kind of like that. And then there's this other one here that does appear to have almost like Triforce-like symbols here, and a goddess statue, and it's very medieval-esque, and maybe it's Zelda related, maybe it's not. I will point out this is a separate listing from the Zelda hiring page. This is the new IP hiring page. And so they've been working supposedly on a new IP, a new series for a long time, and we don't know what it is. But my speculation has been that it's something that's going to be a fresh start for them, something that could have the opportunity to be more successful than the Xenoblade series. Because while Monolith Soft does offer support work for The Legend of Zelda, for Splatoon and Animal Crossing, they are extremely important to Nintendo development because they help out with some of their biggest projects. When it comes to their own personal Xenoblade series, while it is a healthy series that sells 1 to 3 million copies, relative to the other projects they work on, it's very niche and small by comparison. From a popularity perspective, from a scope, quality perspective, the Xenoblade series is one of the best series Nintendo has to offer. So it excites me to think about what else Monolithsoft could accomplish if they move away from Xenoblade, at least for a little bit. And I would say it makes a lot of sense for them to position their new IP, their new project, in the beginning of the Switch 2 era. Why? Because coming out with a game in the beginning of the era, especially if it's a major Nintendo title, it's an opportunity to reach a new audience and also establish evergreen sales. Sales that continue to come as the years go on over time, especially as more and more people buy the console. So if Monolithsoft can successfully put out a big successful game in that first year that is considered to be one of the key titles for Switch 2, they could be looking at their best-selling game ever, at least in terms of the games where they were the primary developer. And when we consider the history of Monolith Soft and how they've been at the forefront of pushing technology for Nintendo hardware, what Monolith Soft could put together for Nintendo Switch 2, this console that we're hearing is dramatically more powerful than Nintendo Switch. This is going to be a huge leap for them. This might be one of the largest leaps they've ever seen from a technology perspective. Because let's remind ourselves that Monolith Soft hasn't been making games for Nintendo since the beginning of time. No, Monolith Soft, once upon a time, was not a part of Nintendo. That's why we still sometimes see confusion on this. But since 2007, Monolith Soft has been a part of Nintendo. And so as a result, they've only been able to make games for Nintendo over the last few generations, and Nintendo's always been at least a generation behind. But with this next console, we're going to be seeing a significant leap here. And so what Monolithsoft may be able to accomplish here, it's exciting to think about, and I am definitely thinking this is a title that we could be seeing relatively soon. I think it's something that could be coming out next year. Now, the reason I believe that is because when we look at the cadence of releases from Monolithsoft, the pattern seems to suggest that next year is the next game. So you look at the release of Xenoblade X, that came out 2015, they had a break year. Xenoblade 2 came out at the end of 2017, but then they had DLC in 2018, then they had a break year, 2019, then their Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition in 2020, a remaster, then another break year in 2021, then 2022 we saw the release of Xenoblade Chronicles 3, then 2023 we saw the DLC for Xenoblade Chronicles 3, And now, with how far we are into 2024, my expectation is that there will be nothing this year. It will be a break year, which would then have us positioned for a new game next year to come out in that first year for Nintendo Switch 2. Now, something I will note here is that, while yes, we've seen hirings for this supposed new IP for many years, and perhaps this is something that they've been cooking for a very long time, when we take a look at Xenoblade Chronicles 2 from 2017, it came out December 2017. It barely made it out in the launch year. And with the initial release, there were some little issues. It was clear that it was a little bit less polished. They got the game out quickly because they were developing it in different parts. And ultimately, the game is still very good, and they've since done a few patches to improve things. But the game was rushed, and it barely made it out in time for 2017. So with that in mind, they may not rush things here. And while it's possible that it still may be ready for 2025, it's also possible that they will have taken a lesson learned from what happened with Xenoblade 2 and take a little bit longer if it's not ready. Now, I think that Monolith Soft has just gotten better at developing games and they've streamlined their process a little bit more, so I don't think they're going to run into issues like Xenoblade 2. But something else that I would like to note is that Xenoblade 2 is the best-selling Xenoblade game in the series. And part of that does have to do with Pyra Mythra and Smash Bros. That certainly helped a little bit. But also Xenoblade 2 came out in that first year, so it took that opportunity to be part of the key Nintendo titles for Switch in the beginning, and since has seen continued sales. Not on an extremely significant level, but to a degree. Point is that there is value in coming out with a game early on for a console. So we'll see on this, but my thinking here is that this legacy project, whatever it is, there's a good chance it comes out next year, or at the very least, it seems like we're going to get an official announcement for this, if not this year, sometime next year. But maybe this isn't a new IP. Maybe it could be simply another Xenoblade game. Even though it doesn't match up codename-wise at all, that doesn't mean it can't be another Xenoblade game. Well, I would like to point out a few different things from the director of Monolith Soft, Takahashi, in reference to Xenoblade and its future. So we got a few interesting tidbits from this translated interview having to do with the Aeonios Moments art book. So here Takahashi says, Xenoblade 3, it's what has continued in the Xenoblade series from 1 to 2 and then to 3. The story of Xenoblade 1, 2, and 3 is, at the end of the day, really a story about a man named Klaus, who became the catalyst. That was one story that had always been there, and so in that sense, the end of that can be said to be a culmination. However, how do I say this? During the creation, I'm personally already thinking about what comes next. So it's more of a passing point, not a culmination. So I think this is important to point out because it goes to show that the Xenoblade series is not necessarily done. But let me show you other few interesting quotes from Takahashi. So this is coming from the same interview, but this is in reference to End's sword from Xenoblade 3. What's inside of the sword of the End that End holds? That would be Logos. I mean, it's Malos, but Malos for the time being is dead, or has disappeared. As to why Malos is there, I'm sorry about this, but I can't answer that at this point. But what End is holding there, that is Malos himself. So what's interesting here is that they refer to Malos, the villain from Xenoblade 2, as being in a state for the time being that is dead or has disappeared. In other words, implying that something could change later down the road. Perhaps giving some fuel for how we could see a connection in a future Xenoblade game. And then I'll read you this part from another interview that came out shortly after the release of Xenoblade 3 from Takahashi. Rather than playing on defense, going on the offense, change rather than maintain. This is a stance that I've continued to hold for 30 years. If there is another Xenoblade, it will likely be something vastly different from what came before. In style and in music, I would like to make my next goal something that will betray everyone's expectations, in a good way. So considering the different things I've read here from Takahashi in reference to the future of Xenoblade, it's clear to me that the Xenoblade series is not done. It's clear to me that they may still have connections from prior Xenoblade games, but at the same time, Takahashi is interested in doing something very different, a dramatic departure here. How that materializes, that remains to be seen. But perhaps this legacy title, this codename, the reason it's different is because, well, this next Xenoblade game is going to be very different. So while I'm still thinking it's most likely a new IP, there is the possibility that the next title is just another Xenoblade game, but perhaps a dramatic departure and done in a way that could reach a larger new audience on Switch 2. But when considering the meaning of legacy, honoring the past, rich history, is there perhaps something we can extrapolate from this in reference to the next game? Some people take this to mean that this is somehow going to be a game that celebrates the history of Xenoblade, which, okay, sure, that's possible, but then I just kind of go back to all the other Xenoblade games do the same thing. They relate to all the prior games, they do celebrate the history of the series, and their codenames don't relate to anything like Legacy. So I am skeptical on that. But there is something very curious going on that I do think is mentioning here. And it's a thought that has crossed my mind. I don't believe it fully, but there are other people that are speculating and entertaining this idea even further. So I still think that there is going to be a modern remake of Ocarina of Time someday. And I don't think it's going to be necessarily that far off, because I feel like it's something that could come out early on for Switch 2, because the idea would be that Nintendo would want to get out something major Zelda to showcase the console, but also to bring in the Zelda fan base, because the next mainline Zelda is going to be many years away. There's a whole bunch of other reasons why I think this is happening. That's not the point for this video. You can check those other videos out from the past if you don't know what I'm referring to here. But let's operate under the assumption that there is going to be a big Zelda remake early on for Switch 2. Whatever it is, be it Ocarina of Time or another Zelda game, a big, modern remake of a 3D Zelda. It is interesting that yesterday, we got this news from Midori about Legacy, May 28th. But also, we got the official announcement of Zelda Lego on May 28th, in the beginning of the day. So, I'm somewhat curious here if perhaps Midori knows a little bit more, or at least has their own speculations on what this project is, and thinks it could be Zelda related, and that's why they presented this info on the same day of this Zelda announcement. I think it's possible. But when we also consider that there's definitely been a lot of theories and speculation that Monolith Soft has been working on something Zelda related outside of the mainline Zelda series for a while. I mean, you look at these pieces of concept art, even though this is the new IP page, it's very Zelda-esque with literally someone who looks like Princess Zelda. But then here, there are actual Triforces. So yeah, it seems like maybe something with that, but then also they still hire for Zelda development. So this idea that maybe Monolith Soft could be working on something Zelda related, maybe a modern remake, reboot of a older 3D Zelda like Ocarina of Time, is that a stretch? Well, it's not something Monolith Soft has really done before, but if we're talking about getting something like a modern remake of, say, Ocarina of Time, Monolith Soft would probably be a pretty good developer to do this, because they are well acquainted with The Legend of Zelda. They've been working on Zelda for years. They helped with not just Tears of the Kingdom, with not just Breath of the Wild, but even Skyward Sword. So they are super acquainted with The Legend of Zelda. They are a high quality studio. And if the idea behind the Zelda project is to put something together away from the main Zelda team so they can focus on the next new Zelda game, a studio that already works really close with the Zelda team, Monolith Soft, might be the best fit to do something like this. So perhaps the codename Legacy could be about the legacy of Zelda, and they are working on some sort of big remake in this sense. I love the thinking. I do think something like this is happening. I do think that with the Zelda movie, Nintendo will want to position something significant like that also early on for Switch 2. I'm just not sure that Monolith Soft is the studio behind this, because I think there could be someone else Nintendo could find to do this in conjunction with other Nintendo studios overseeing it, like the Zelda team. Maybe Monolith Soft could still help out on this potential remake, but I still feel like they would have their own new entry coming out early on for Switch 2. But what do you think? Do you believe Midori? Do you think Monolith Soft, one of Nintendo's best developers, is working on a title codenamed Legacy? And what might it be? Could it finally be the new IP we've been anticipating for so many years? Is it somehow a Zelda remake? Or is it the next Xenoblade game? Let me know what you think in the comments below. This is AndresRestart. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I'll see you all really soon. Take care. Bye.